皆さん、こんにちは。香川博です。本を書いたりするときは、山癖洋二というペンネームを使ってます。よろしくお願いします。さてとですね、一週間前に、ですね、ある、インタビューしました。それはですね、ボストンにいるスコット・ハスさんという、方なんですね。今実はね、私、フィリピンに来てましてね、こういう T シャツ着てますけども、ビデオの中では一週間前ですから、東京ですよね。なぜかというと、要するに中間選挙がアメリカで終わりましたよね。この中間選挙が終わった後というのは、いよいよアメリカは大統領選挙に入るわけで、ものすごくこう、いろいろとですね、状況が変わるんです。こういう外交政策も全てそうなんですけど、こう、状況が変わっている時というのは、ここに私が今いるフィリピンも含めて日本もね、いろいろこう、注意しないといけないことがあるわけですよね。なんかそういうことについてざっくばらんにカジュアルに、非常にですね、政治色の強いそのボストンの、人、から話をこう聞いてみました。ぜひね、字幕もついてますので、楽しんで聞いてみてください。お願いします。Hi, Scott.
Hi, Hiroshi. Good morning, good evening.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much for your time. I have a question about the midterm election result. You know, the result was favorable for Democrats, which I thought. How would you think?
I think people were very surprised by how well the Democrats did, and also how many of the candidates that Trump had endorsed lost elections. So in that respect, it was very positive, particularly with respect to the Senate. There's one more senatorial race coming up, I think December 6th it is, in Georgia. But even that's between Herschel Walker and it's embarrassing, the former Reverend and Warnock. And no matter how that race is decided, the Democrats still will control the Senate. So that's very positive.
Sure. Okay. And then how would you analyze the result of that?
So that's interesting. So I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is truly the epicenter. It's of liberal thought in the States.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have a very narrow perspective. So when you're in Cambridge or even in parts of Boston, but particularly Cambridge, you think that the whole world is blue. You think the whole world is liberal.
I see.
And because it's highly educated between Harvard and MIT. So that's the context. But more broadly, I think that ironically, when the Supreme Court overturned the access to reproductive rights, the access to abortion, I think it backfired on them because a lot of people, whether they're liberal or Democrat, a liberal or Republican, Democrat or Republican, are in favor of access to abortion when a woman decides that she wants to end a pregnancy. So I think that helped the Democrats. I think had it not been for that, it's not clear that the Democrats would have done as well. That's what I think, because inflation in the States, as you've been hearing, is very high. And for people who have budgets and for people who have children and so on, it's really challenging. You can feel it when you go to the grocery store. It's not so dramatic, let's say, at the gas station because, say, like people live in cities or don't commute distances, but at the grocery store, you really feel it.
But do you think this is a fault of the Democrat side or like a president?
No, definitely not. But I have friends in the financial sector in New York, and they assure me that no matter who's in power, whether it's a Republican
tough time, it is tough time anyway.
Tough time. The Republicans and Democrats do not control how businesses operate. So if Google decides to hire 10,000 more employees and their profit goes down and they have to charge more for services, that has nothing to do with who's in power. I mean, you could argue that the Republicans, by lowering taxes, create a better business environment, but that just hasn't been proven to be true. It's really a factor of the war in Ukraine. It's a factor of the lingering effects of the ongoing pandemic. I mean, many businesses have not reopened in Boston, for sure. Many businesses have closed. The hybrid model of doing businesses is still in place. I think all of that has an impact on the economy. And I also think that a number of businesses, quite frankly, are taking advantage. They're raising prices because they can. They can do it.
Okay, I have I have a quite a serious question, which is from now to the presidential election, even if Democrats took a majority portion of the upper seat, but I believe that there are a lot of turbulences can be expected from now, and then particularly like a Ukrainian issue or whatever, maybe American view will be going into more like a narrower for the domestic issue rather than the international issue. How would you predict it?
I think for most people, no matter whether they're American or Japanese, people focus on the domestic issues.
Of course.
I mean, not even ordinary. Most people are concerned about, I went to the grocery store 3 months ago, I spent $40. This month I spent $65. Wow. I'm saving less money in the bank. So when you go to somebody in, I don't know, Osaka or Boston, and you say, what do you think of the war in Ukraine? The person will probably say it's terrible and it should end, and it's awful what the Russians are doing to the people of Ukraine. That's pretty much the level of things here. I don't think that it's going to change in terms of Americans unwilling to help the Ukrainians. I think that most Americans are in favor of helping the Ukrainians in terms of economics and weaponry. I think that most Americans don't want to see the situation escalate. So I think that if there was a bill in the Congress that said, let's give the Ukrainians higher grade weapons, I think the Congress would say no, because we don't want to see the Russians use nuclear weapons, which they probably would, frankly. So everyone's just waiting for it to end.
But it seems like a dead end right now.
It's never a dead end. I mean, it has to be negotiated. It's never a dead end. Wars end. And I think that for the Russians, I understand. I'm not particularly anti-Russian for a lot of reasons. And I think not because I like Putin, but I admire Russia's pride as a nation. I admire Russia's support during the Second World War of the Allied forces. So I have a lot of respect for Russia. And I think that Russia cannot end the war as a loser. So how do we help Russia leave as a winner? Or not as a loser?
With pride, can I say, with a pride.
How do we help Russia end as a matter of pride? How do that, without so-called losing face? So one way, of course, would be to say, you keep part of Ukraine, but of course then Zelensky says they don't keep anything. So that's the dead end part you're referring to. So somebody has to step in and say, listen, enough. It has to stop here, and not just for economic reasons. Lives are being lost every day. It's a human tragedy of huge proportions.
Okay, going back to the domestic issue, next 2 years, how would you predict about, but particularly like Trump's influence seems like getting lower and lower, because even the kind of Republicans feel kind of dangerous to support Trump so much, because it's ridiculous even from the Republicans' point of view. But on the other hand, like a governor of Florida or something like that, there are a lot of super right wing who support anti-abortions and who support anti-immigrants, and this trend cannot be changed so much. And then again, that Ukrainian issue is not, of course, it's negotiable, but it is tough to solve this puzzle. And economy is inflation, and also seems like a recession going together. So how you can?
I don't think there's going to be a recession. I mean, and so there's. You raised a lot of questions. So, and I'm no expert.
Sorry. Yeah, but just
I'm no expert. So just to tease out. So people have historically made a terrible mistake in underestimating Trump. And I wouldn't underestimate him. I underestimated him in 2016. I thought it would be wonderful if he was the candidate. I was thrilled when he was the candidate, because I thought that Hillary Clinton would crush him, and I was so wrong. And I really underestimated his appeal. I don't watch a lot of television. In fact, I don't watch network television. So I don't know how people who watch television react to him. And I completely underestimated his telegenic skills and his ability to get people excited. So I wouldn't count him out. And DeSantis sounds like a normal person. He's a very charismatic person. He's only 43 or 44 years old. So I wouldn't underestimate him either. So that's one thing. I think that there's a great conservatism in the United States that's really, really upset and frightened by diversity in gender, in race, and so on. And I think that people look to a leader to say, we're going to restore America to what it, but America never was what they're thinking. It never was that. I mean, as far as the economy goes, I mean, people also have underestimated the American economy. The American economy is such an engine that it's so vibrant. And also, what my friends in the financial sector always say to me is, it's the only game in town. Where are most people, if they have any money, where are they going to put their money to see it grow? They can't afford to buy companies. They can't afford to buy real estate. So they're going to put their money into the stock market. That being true, the stock market, if you don't need the money today or tomorrow, it has a history of growing. And of course, it also has a history of crashing. But I don't think the U.S. is going to go into a recession.
So that means like it is more like an optimistic way, like maybe particularly in the presidential campaign time, ordinary case, stock is going up, because, to support candidates, I mean, so that's a natural way. But do you think like this happens again?
No one knows. I mean, no one knows about the stock market. I mean,
just a side issue, but
no, but I mean, I call up my friends in the financial sector and I ask them, and they say, well, the stocks go up, the stocks go down. I mean, there's no way of knowing, and you're taking a chance, you're just taking a chance if you have money in the stock market. But it's hard to say what's going to happen with that. It's not really optimistic so much as there's no choice. I mean, it's the U.S. economy is very strong. It has historically been strong. It's strong in comparison because where are people going to put their money? They're not going to. There's no other place to put it. They're not going to put it in China. They're not going to put it in the EU zone. They're not going to put it in Japan. Where are they going to put it? So they're going to put it in the U.S. stock market. And the dollar is strong. So, I mean, the only thing that could happen is it'll be harder for U.S. products to be sold overseas. But I mean, there's people much smarter than I am who are working on that right now, and they're going to figure out a way to make this happen. I mean, if you look at the stock market since 2008, when it more or less crashed 14 years ago, when the housing bubble crashed, it's amazing how much it has grown in 14 years.
Yeah. And I know that you are supporting the liberal side. So you mentioned that like a DeSantis, like a Florida governor, you cannot underestimate it. Maybe it might be a threat for the liberal portions, and with the, what is the most likely, how can I say, you can predict these 2 years? What is the kind of point of that kind of struggle, or like for liberal side?
Well, people don't want to see that the rights that they have acquired through legislation, the laws, they don't want to see those taken away. They were just taken away with Roe Wade, access to abortion. They don't want to see access to same-sex marriages taken away. They don't want to see laws that have protected Black people taken away. They don't want to see things taken away. It's more like preservation at this point, frankly. It's more of in a lot of ways, the agenda is let's keep what we have because we like our rights. You know what I mean? So we'll see what happens with respect to that. The goal, I think, is to keep what we have.
Well, but just these days, I can see from abroad, ordinary case, there are stereotypes, Democrats consist of lot of immigrants, or like Black people, or like minority people, but these days I can see a lot of conservative side, like DeSantis is a typical example. who is Latino background, right?
And then Italian. No. DeSantis is Italian.
Italian, sorry.
Italian American. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, you do see emerging, same thing in England with the current prime minister.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's fine. But there's certainly a mix. I mean, the Democratic Party is not primarily immigrant or not primarily Black. It's a mix of, it's a coalition of different people. I mean, to the U.S. credit, the U.S. is a friend of mine originally from India. He said he likes living in the States because it is the least tribal place he has ever lived. So there's a real mix of people. I mean, I don't agree with policies in the Republican Party, but it's not a party. It's a party that's attractive to a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. I mean, you see a lot of, for example, historically, Cuban Americans have liked the Republican Party because the Republican Party was very anti-Castro. And there's just a variety of reasons why people choose party affiliation. The Republican Party also historically has been seen as the party of business. They know how to run the economy. But that's also not true. I mean, it's just a mix of perceptions. I mean, it used to be, I'm old enough to remember when there were really wonderful Republicans you could have an argument or a discussion with, where you would disagree about certain things and you would respect one another. And you would say, well, I see your point of view and I see your point of view, and you'd be friends. But it's the people in the Republican Party who are in positions of leadership now, I think, are behaving irresponsibly because they used to be a party where people would listen to one another. They didn't go to the margins. They didn't go to the margins.
Okay. Quite an interesting question. If you are the leader of the liberal side, then what would you do for next 2 years to gain the win to the presidential campaign? What would you do for next 2 years?
Well, it's the old story, right? It's bread and butter issues. I mean, I work with people in my clinical work who have no money. I mean, literally no money. They don't have a checking account. They live in public housing. They go from month to month, depending on what they receive from the government in terms of benefits. And then if you go up the ladder and you meet people who are making, say, $12 an hour, $14 an hour, and then you go further up the ladder and you meet people who are making much more money than that, say $40 an hour. But in the city of Boston, the price of housing is unbelievable. It's Boston and in New York and San Francisco. So the real issue is creating affordable lives, safe and affordable lives, so that people, I know people, I've met people. So you have health insurance now in the United States. You have a copay when you go to the doctor. Your insurance covers the visit, but you have to pay a certain copay. It can be $15, it can be $25, it can be $30.
I see.
There are people who do not have $30. They put it on their credit card, but their credit card now is they can't pay the bill. So you have to make healthcare more affordable.
I see.
You have to lower the copays. You have to do something about the inflation in the stores. You have to do something about creating affordable housing. The mayor of Boston, Mayor Wu, a Chinese American, she's wonderful, is trying to create a situation where Boston pays more attention to affordable housing. She's also trying to create a situation where the subway lines, I think 2 of the lines that work in communities that are not so well off, she wants to make them free. So things like that, lowering the prices of things. And if the Democrats can do that, that would help a lot. I mean, people can't afford things, and that's terrible. This country, the United States, is so rich. And it's to make these issues non-ideological. I mean, my argument is a very simple one.
I see.
So if I was a factory owner and I was a far right-wing guy, far right, I would want my workers to show up to work. I'd want them to be healthy, and I'd want them to want to come to work. I'd want them to want to work for me. So how would I do that? I would create safe housing for them.
Sure.
I would make sure they are healthy physically and mentally. I would make sure they have access to healthcare. and I would make sure that they can afford to buy the things they need for their families. But I could be a fascist, and I would believe in that. And but that's what the fascists did in the 30s in Germany. They did all that. They did that for the workers.
You're right. You're right.
And so it's not an ideological issue. It's making people feel safe and be able to take care of their families and want to come to work. And if the Democrats can do that, that'd be great.
Oh, that is a bottom line issue, really.
Right.
Additional issue, always, I mean, people got killed in the Chesapeake Bay area, the gun control and the abortion issue. These two additional issues, which is also crucial too. But how do you see that balance on the economy and that kind of things?
Well, the gun laws right now are by state. So Massachusetts, for example, is extremely strict. So part of my clinical work, I meet people who have been to prison. And in Massachusetts, if you have a gun and you have no license for it and you're stopped by the police, immediate 1 year in prison.
Okay.
So it's not national, though.
Okay.
Massachusetts also has a ban on AR-15s, those horrible weapons that are really designed to kill for war. So there have to be national policies, because in fact, some idiot could come in from another state to Massachusetts with this kind of weaponry and create havoc. So I happen to think guns are okay. I think people should have guns. I don't have a problem with it, but they should have policies similar to Japan, which is licensure, regulated by the police, tests, the ammunition's kept in a separate place, mental health tests, but we don't have those kinds of laws in the States. So there have to be laws that say, yes, of course you can have a gun to protect or hunt or whatever you like. But we as a community need to feel safe with you. You have to pay attention to these laws.
That got to be a big kind of argument point, maybe, also. And also, how about abortion? Everybody is scared in the United States, particularly humans, no?
Again, it's by the states. So Massachusetts has a very, because it's a medical issue, isn't it? It's not a matter for lawyers to decide. I mean, it's a matter for doctors with patients to decide, with the woman to decide, in my opinion. It's not a radical opinion. I mean, many countries on the planet Earth right now have more liberal or more progressive laws about abortion than the United States. I mean, and my daughter, who's a doctor, has pointed out to me, a person could have an ectopic pregnancy where the pregnancy is in the fallopian tubes and so-called. And so that person, if they come to term, will die. The mother will die. Or they have all sorts of gynecological procedures that fall under the umbrella of so-called abortion that are not, these individuals will not be able to have abortions. That's criminal. The mothers will die. So there has to be a reasonable, it has to be between the woman and the doctor. These are not radical views. I mean, this was the law until 6 months ago.
I see. Okay. Well, so these 2 points still maybe a great argument point in the United States politics.
Perhaps, but if people have to afford, so if the economy, when it comes time to vote, is not, if things are not affordable, that's going to be a problem for whoever, for the people in power, isn't it? I mean,
I understand. Okay.
But I think that it's also state by state, and also it's a question of propaganda. I mean, Trump really does not have a great deal of love for the people who vote for him. He has no love for them, really. So, but people are convinced by his arguments that they should vote for him. So it's a question of really being able to create a public image of oneself that is appealing.
I see. Okay. I understand. Yeah. Thank you very much. I mean, for your opinion, the kind of future predictions, I hope that, these next 2 years can be, how can I say, not peacefully. I want peace, no
right.
And no kind of stupid argument or like, yeah.
Well, it's, the thing about the United States that's so interesting and so annoying is that things are constantly changing.
Right. Constantly
They're constantly changing, unpredictably. So in a positive way, what is true today is not necessarily true tomorrow. So that's a really good thing. On the other hand, how people get their information in the United States, I interview, as I say, in my clinical practice, and one of the questions I ask is, do you read a daily newspaper? No one is reading a newspaper that I meet. And I'm not saying that newspapers are the best, are the only source of information, but people are getting information from the internet or from television, and it's really not necessarily the best. I think newspapers really provide more depth, perhaps.
Okay.
And so that's disturbing. It concerns me. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying. I come from Cambridge, where everybody reads a newspaper.
I see. All right. I got it. Thank you so much. And let's talk later, okay?
Okay, bye-bye.